Cargo theft running rampant from traditional methods to newer ones, what we can learn from the trends, and how you can stay safe.
Plus, the fight against human trafficking continues, and for the first time ever, all 50 states are stepping up. Welcome to the show. I'm Ashley Blackford.
And I'm Scott Thompson.
Scott, lots to get to today.
Yes, busy Friday.
Busy Friday, yes, indeed. We're going to be looking at efforts to combat human trafficking as well as cargo theft, two, pretty big topics that we cover a lot.
Yeah, Keith Lewie from CargoNet is going to join us here in just a few minutes to talk about some of the new trends. We pointed some of them out, I think, a few days ago with metals being kind of one of the trending
copper theft
targets, and organized criminal rings and all this that's going on out there. Between that and then we've got also the fraud aspect of things kind of, jumping up as well. It's really concerning.
Yeah.
That's why it's good to have people like Keith Lewie, I think, on the show to talk to them about what we're seeing out there. And most importantly, what people can do to—
if he has any advice.
Yeah, to stay safe and stay off the radar from some of these folks who are doing some really bad things. And speaking of bad things, human trafficking, still an issue. I know we're going to speak with Kylla Lanier from TAT.
Yes.
Quite a bit to talk about there as well, right, with the CVSA.
Yeah, CVSA earlier this year, Canada, Mexico, U.S. Areas there did human trafficking, kind of an awareness campaign. So we're getting some numbers back from there. We're going to chat with her and see how those look and, what can be done to help this issue.
Yeah, helpful information there for sure. Speaking of information, let's get to some news of the day here, Ashley, and noticed a couple of new surveys that are out. And these are interesting, too, because they kind of give us a way to look in to see how people are feeling out there amid all the conditions that we talk about on a daily basis. And some interesting stuff from these two surveys.
Yeah, the first one, truckstop.com, recently came out with one on how technology is used to help truck drivers, be more efficient. And the majority of truck drivers are quite optimistic about the future of the industry when it comes to technology. They're thinking, more fraud prevention, route optimization. Some truckers are even saying they're getting more comfortable with AI-powered tools, which I thought was interesting. As for what they're thinking will be the biggest influences on the industry for the next 5 years, load availability, fuel costs, and emerging technologies. So definitely, I think all things we probably could have expected.
And this is the one from truckstop.com.
Yes.
Is the survey here. Yeah, and that is interesting, I think, because technology, I think, for a lot of folks is a concern as well, too, about it kind of creeping into the cab and taking some controls away and being kind of the big brother in the cab, too. But for the most part, this survey found that people are open.
Positive about it,
Yeah, as long as it can help them in their operations and their daily and
work
their daily
for
life.
them, not against them, which is, of course,
that's
the worry.
That's that crazy fine line you gotta kind of balance on there for sure. But interesting there from truckstop.com. And we've got another one from Conversion Interactive Agency, but not the CIA, not that CIA, a different CIA.
Different one.
Yeah.
The 2025 Carrier Survey from Conversion Interactive Agency and PDA. Did I say that right?
That's right, PDA.
Right.
Not that PDA either.
Not the other
this one's
PDA.
People Data Analytics, yeah.
So they released a survey recently called Uncovering Carrier Perspectives on Today's Driver Landscape. Some of the key findings in that were concern is still growing amongst carriers over the current state of the freight economy, something else I know that we've talked about on our show.
Yeah.
Retention is one of the top issues mentioned, which, of course, is something that OOIDA has been saying for years. It's not a shortage problem. It's a retention problem.
Yeah. And I think, 38% of motor carriers in this survey still do not have a formal driver retention program in place. And as you said, OOIDA, this has been the recurring theme. This is kind of the underlying theme, I think, of everything that— not everything, but most things that we talk about here is, how are you treating the people that work for you? And especially on the heels of that testimony in the Senate subcommittee that we covered yesterday on yesterday's show, about all these things that are pushing drivers out of the industry, and yet a lot of these companies still are not thinking about retention which makes you wonder, are they more
Yeah.
thinking about the churn or what it is? But yeah, that was one interesting thing
Hmm.
I noticed in that survey as well, too.
Something else they looked at, pay, of course. Majority of carriers said they're unsure if they're going to be able to give any raises to drivers, or they just straight up said no because they don't have it in the budget. Nearly 30% said they do plan to pay drivers more in the near future. So kind of a mixed bag on that one.
Yeah. And also, a majority, 54% of carriers also said the freight economy was their top concern right now, which I think tracks with,
Hmm.
mostly what we hear out there as well, too, is as to when this freight recession, is it over? Is it not over? What's that going to look like? I think the jury is still out to a degree, but the fact of the matter remains that we are still kind of on rock bottom,
Yeah.
still scraping the bottom of the barrel here with rates and everything else as well. So, some optimism there. It's good to be optimistic, obviously,
Yeah.
but
Glass half full.
yeah, for sure. Let's move on to another story here out of Ohio. And let's give kudos to states like Ohio. Florida's another one that has really taken on this truck parking problem,
Mm.
recognized the problem, and are actively trying to do something about it. In the case of Ohio here, they recently reopened 4 new rest areas in 3 counties. 2 are off US 30, 2 more off US 33, each with 10 truck parking spaces between them, bringing a total across the 4 to 40 spots. This is part of a larger plan across Ohio that includes 36 new rest areas and upgrades to more than 40 others by the end of 2026. And I just checked before we walked in here, Ashley. At this moment, this very moment right now, the state of Ohio has 82 rest areas statewide that have truck parking spaces.
Wow.
It is good to see these states, making this a commitment for sure. And that's
Yeah.
what it's going to take, to end this truck parking crisis as we know it right now.
Yeah, definitely. Another story we were looking at, bridge strikes. A number of states are joining together for a campaign this week called Check Your Height, Know It's Right. The goal of this is, of course, to encourage truckers to be aware of bridge clearance and what they're hauling. The Eastern Transportation Coalition is supporting this campaign. One thing that they said, which I thought was interesting, was that bridge strikes, they're oftentimes, not experienced truck drivers.
Hmm.
They're people driving moving trucks, delivery vans
Mm,
that aren't kind of in that mindset
makes
to
sense.
know,
Yeah.
is this going to fit? So, a few tips, of course: know your height, don't rely on GPS. We've seen that many times. And, of course, pay attention to the signs.
Yes, indeed. And fresh off the heels of our talk with Missy Cummings about autonomous vehicle safety, we've got a new partnership to tell you about. It's between Bot Auto and Steves and Sons. Bot Auto is the autonomous trucking company here, if you couldn't tell by the name. Steves and Sons is a company that manufactures doors, and the partnership here means autonomous trucks will be used to be hauling loads for Steves and Sons in Texas, more specifically between Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. No word yet on whether a human's going to be in the cab for those runs, but it is worth noting that Bot Auto specializes in level 4
Mm.
technology, meaning it can handle most driving situations without a human stepping in,
Interesting.
but they can only really operate in specific locations like highways. So, another wrinkle to the Texas
Yeah.
autonomous vehicle experiment that continues. Let's move on here real quick because we've got someone on the line now to talk about cargo theft. We mentioned him earlier, Keith Lewis of CargoNet. Keith, how you doing?
Good. Thanks. And thanks for the opportunity.
So, numbers just came out from the second quarter of the year. Obviously, things aren't looking great. Just wondering, can you walk us through what you found with that?
Well, sure. Well, these are numbers that these thefts are reported to us by our members. We've got different verticals of members: insurance, asset-based carriers, owner operators, freight brokers, freight forwarders, insurance, and our most valued client is our law enforcement relationship with law enforcement officers all over the United States that provide this data to us. So we saw almost a 22% increase. And a lot of that has to do with the increase in the fraud. And primarily, what we saw was a big increase in copper thefts, copper, and food and beverage for this quarter. So, food and beverage is always going to lead the pack, but we're seeing that increase in the commercial and industrial. It's up It's not a significant number, 27 to 18, but it's still, an increase. And again, this is just a picture of what is stolen in the United States. There's no mandatory reporting to law enforcement, so a lot of it doesn't get reported. There's no mandatory reporting to us. Some people report to us and they don't report to law enforcement. They report to law enforcement, they don't report to us, or they report to both. Or we find it doing some research on our own. So we're probably, industry experts will say this is about a 10% picture. I would say that's probably pretty accurate. I don't put myself in that group of industry experts. I'm focused solely on the data, the true numbers that we can provide.
10%. So essentially, you're saying the real numbers, quote unquote, real numbers are probably up to 10 times higher than what we're seeing out there right now.
That's according to some of the subject matter experts that you'll hear that I would consider in that group. One thing that you have to remember is we don't include rail thefts in our numbers. In the rail industry, the three largest rail providers in the United States, in the U.S. and Canada, just in a testimony to the legislature in Washington, just reported they had 65,000 thefts just on their own.
Wow. What the numbers that we're looking at here are high across the board. And you said something earlier I wanted to kind of circle back to. You mentioned fraud. We've got kind of different pockets of this criminal activity, I guess, as it were, right? We've got the fraud kind of on one side. We've got traditional cargo theft on the other. You mentioned that the rise, at least in your numbers, is primarily due to an increase in fraud. If you were to kind of separate those two, how big an increase, I guess, are we seeing with fraud schemes and things like that, as opposed to the traditional cargo theft, measures that we see?
Okay, so a couple of answers to that. Fraud's coming in probably about 40% of the total of our thefts now. It's increased to about 40%. And depending on which time period you want to look at, since 2020, 21, we can say fraud is up, I think one of our charts said 1,475%.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah, I know. It's a big number. And traditional cargo theft is up about 90%. From the COVID, the COVID period we had of 2020.
Wow. You mentioned, some of the things that are stolen that have gone up, the metals, food and beverage. Do you find that changes from quarter to quarter, or is that kind of on par for what you've seen?
Well, we'll see some. We will see. I wouldn't say quarter to quarter. What you have to remember is you'll have some. For example, what happened in South Texas with the floods. You'll see some. All of a sudden, you'll see bottles of water being stolen, or MREs, or other type of supplies, building materials. You'll start to see increases based on natural disasters, and then you'll see what happened in California a few years ago with the big push to electric everything, right? Your lawnmower has to be electric. Everything has to be electric. So we had a little panic there in Western Arizona and California on electricity, how we're going to power our house. And we saw an increase in solar panels. So, and at that same time, we had the solar panel incident to kind of drill down food and beverage. It was energy drinks. Energy drinks are legal. You make it for a penny, sell it for $1, and it's addictive. So, there's a lot of different anomalies that kind of come around this. But the one thing we have to remember is it's a push-pull, right? So what the consumer is buying, that's what the criminal is stealing. The criminal in the old days, back when I was on a federal task force, they'd steal everything. They'd steal it, and if they couldn't sell it, we'd find it abandoned on the side of the road. We just don't see that anymore. The thefts now are more targeted. They know what they're stealing before they steal it, and they typically have it sold, or most of it sold, or a place to cross-dock it, divert it, before they even steal it. So one of the other emerging problems we have now is the international. Most of these groups, the shot callers, if you will, use a law enforcement term there, the shot caller, they're all over the world now. So on the fraud side, it used to be somebody sitting on their couch at home, moving loads on their smartphone. Now you've got somebody across the salt and they're moving loads and diverting drivers. And there's just so many different. If you're looking in the fraud vertical, there's just so many different straight out thefts and scams, and then you have folks that have jumped in that. And this is the thing for your owner operators: these dispatch services of somebody that's really just somebody figured out a way to make $200 or $300 a load or a day, whatever, and sit home and have drivers call them and they go book loads for them. And there's actually websites that you can just turn your trucks over to now that are run by AI that'll run your trucks around the United States, find the best load and do all the back office billing for you. And there's no vetting. And that's one of the big problems with the fraud is there's just no vetting.
Yeah.
And that's for the owner operator market, they're just being used as pawns. And a lot of times speaking for CargoNet, they're some of our best friends because they'll call us and say, hey, I just picked this load up and this is what the broker or the person saying they're the broker is telling me to do. This doesn't sound right. What should I do? And we're getting that load redirected back to where it needs to go.
I think you just answered this next question for me. But when you're talking about the complexity of this issue and trying to curb the rise, and every time I look at a CargoNet report that comes out, it's up 13% or it's up 22% across the board, or it just keeps going up, which I think speaks to just how difficult it is to stop these groups from doing what they're doing, whether it's traditional cargo theft, and clearly they're organized because they know what they're targeting, or you talk about the fraud aspect of it, where, again, they may be in jurisdictions where the U.S. can't necessarily touch them. How difficult is it to, curb these things? And I guess also what is being done to do that across the board?
Well, good question. Just think of where the industry would be if we didn't have partners such as ourselves and our insurance partners and a few law enforcement task forces around the United States still working this crime. It would be much worse than it is. So, my glass is 3/4 full here. I think there's hope, but the payback, the return on investment is tremendous. So that's why we have a lot of new players from all over the world entering the market. From what's being done is a lot of these cases are now being worked by HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, and we're working closely with them, and we conduct search warrants. They conduct search warrants, which they bring us in on. We send people to the search warrants to help them identify product, and they're taking this on as almost like an international crime of protecting the U.S. assets, because there is an impact to the U.S. economy on this. The FBI stretch, they do have originating jurisdiction on it, but Homeland Security has really stepped up their game, and they've done a great job on the regulation and compliance. The FMCSA, the DOT, they're doing things what they can, and obviously you're being in the business you're familiar with what happened in 1980 with deregulation. When they deregulated, they took the guns and badges away. Before 1980, if a driver was traveling down the highway and the paperwork didn't line up, there was a DOT officer that might stop them that had a gun and a badge and a car with blue lights on it, and the driver was going to jail and a load was impounded. So there was a fear factor with coloring outside the lines before 1980. And with the emergence of the internet and all those other things that we've got now, the crime has spiraled to the point where it is now. But again, FMCSA, they're doing some things, they're stepping up their game as far as not letting folks transfer DOT numbers. They're having to get a whole new. In the old days, a broker would buy another broker just because they had a low DOT number. A carrier would buy another carrier because they had a 5-digit number versus a number in the millions, because it gave them credibility in the industry. It showed longevity. Where now the FMCSA is going to require them to reapply. You can buy the company, but you're going to have to reapply for new authority. So they're doing what they can. They're very aware of the problem, but they're limited like everybody else with funds and people. And criminal enforcement. Most of these actions are civil wrongs. They're torts. So, I hear all the time people say, well, when are they going to stop this illegal double brokering? Well, it's not illegal. It's perfectly legal to do it. It's only illegal, and we cry wolf when things go wrong, but reputable companies do it all day long. But I do have hope. that we're making a dent. We're controlling it. We're herding cats. We're managing the problem, and by collecting the data and providing this information to our clients, they're using our data for cargo theft prevention, predictive analysis, almost like a law enforcement agency would do with their crime analysis unit. So I believe that Verisk is playing a major role here in the prevention of cargo theft.
And I'm curious, I mean, I can only assume that a truck driver listening to all this might feel a little discouraged or worried on
Yeah.
how, what can they do, especially, owner-operators. I, saw that you were quoted saying that traditional security measures, they're no longer sufficient. What can someone do to ensure that they stay safe and that their cargo stays safe?
Well, we could solve this without them spending any money. It's just an awareness, keeping their head on a swivel, watching their six. So in the old days, my dad owned a trucking company. He was an owner operator. So he and his brother would travel across country, and when they would travel and they'd pull into a truck stop to spend the night, they'd back their trailers up against each other so no one could get in the back and open the doors. A novel concept. Next time you're traveling down the road, look on the trailers with a plastic seal on the back and see how many doors are locked. There may be a plastic seal on the back, but no lock.
Yeah.
So there's a novel concept. We can start locking the back doors. Back up against a fence, back up against a pole, back up against a berm for your owner operators. Especially like there's a truck stop in Arizona in Lake Havasu where I used to take pictures of it and send it to our clients and say, this is a great place to stop if you back up here. You could back up and there was like a 50-foot drop off right behind the trailer doors. So nobody could get in the back of the trailer.
Good luck.
Those things don't cost any money. It's just an awareness, right? It's just an awareness. On the fraud side, your members, the owner operators, can be aware of blind shipments. And anytime a broker tells you it's a blind shipment, that's when the antenna should be going up and you should be saying, okay, wait a minute. I heard this on the podcast, on the radio, by the association I belong to. Anytime there's a blind shipment or the broker calls me right after I pick up the load and says, hey, things have changed, stop. Just stop. Call the shipper back and say, this is what I've just been told to do. Is this correct? Call the consignee, the original consignee on the bill of lading. Hey, did you change the routing on this? And remember, a bill of lading is a legal binding contract. It can't be changed or altered. So they're asking the driver when they say, hey, well, we forgot to tell you it's not going here, it's going somewhere else. That driver is breaking the terms of the contract that they signed at the bottom of the bill of lading. They're liable for any changes that they make. They may not realize it, but criminally they're not, unless they're involved in the criminal enterprise. But civilly, they could be held liable for it too when they alter that bill of lading terms. So contact the shipper, contact the consignee. Hey, this is what I'm being told. Call CargoNet. We will be happy to guide them through that process of someone trying to divert that load, misdirect it, and it's just a matter of time before one of these loads gets misdirected, and the owner operator is an innocent pawn in this. And the FBI comes knocking on their door, or Homeland Security comes knocking on their door as the tow truck's seizing their truck outside of their house until they determine, what's going on here with this investigation. So there's a lot at risk for the good owner. And I come from a family of owner operators. So their best interests are in my heart. So I want to make sure that they're protected.
Well, and just looking at the sheer numbers too of where the thefts are taking place, number one, at warehouses and distribution centers, number two, at truck stops. That's enough to tell you that there are enough people out there who are not taking those measures. And of course, when you look at the fraud, I think it's a great point too. I think a lot of folks just want to get the load delivered, and those things that come up are annoyances that they just kind of maybe push aside. But they should pay attention to those things and maybe take a beat before they make a decision.
Okay, so there's two parts to your question there.
Yeah.
If you look at the vertical for warehouse thefts, that's where your fraud's being committed. We have to anchor that somewhere. So that's not someone breaking in the warehouse or breaking through the fence and stealing the trailer. Those things are in there.
Yeah.
But the lion's share of that is the fraud. We have to, from a jurisdictional, from a venue standpoint, that's where we have to anchor the theft. And then to your point on the utilization lowers your cost per mile. So, the annoyance of doing, I think kind of reading into your question is the annoyance of calling a shipper or calling a consignee or having to deal with a blind shipment. These things, they make the operation more clumsy. I got to stop and I got to call. I got to do this. I got to find somebody on the dock. It's difficult to ask because it's the more miles you put on the truck, the less your cost per mile. You're spreading your fixed cost out. But we've got a serious problem in the industry, and I'd rather be a hero in a scenario than a pawn in a criminal operation.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, great advice across the board, Keith. We really do appreciate it. Before we let you go, real quick, where should people go if they want more information and help from CargoNet?
They can report a theft to us at cargotheft@cargonet.com, or they can call us, and I'll get you the number here, 888-595-2638, 888-595-2638, or you can report a theft to cargotheft@cargonet.com, or our website is just cargonet.com.
There it is, Keith. As I said, great advice. Really do appreciate you and your colleagues keeping an eye on this because it is important. At some point, we'll talk to you about the numbers actually going the other direction.
Yes, hopefully.
Going down. But we'll talk to you either way. We do appreciate it, Keith, and we'll talk to you again soon. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Again, that was Keith Lewis of CargoNet. We thank him for his time and the information. Ashley, we get these reports every quarter from CargoNet. And again, not to make a joking matter of this because it's not funny, but the numbers just keep increasing every time we talk to him. And it's important information. I think it's a good reminder to folks out there that you do have to be thinking about this among all the other things you got to be thinking about.
Yeah, he had some good advice.
Absolutely. Good advice there as always. And we'll talk to Keith again in the very near future.
Yes.
In the more near future, Ashley, we're going to be talking trafficking, anti-trafficking.
Yes. We're talking about results coming out. CVSA recently released results on their human trafficking effort to get some education out there. We're going to get Kylla Lanier on the line from Truckers Against Trafficking, TAT, to talk about, break down some of those numbers, see how things are looking, and
also some advice there for folks as well, too.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll have that right after the break. Welcome back. Kylla Lanier joins us now. She is the co-founder and deputy director / senior director of external affairs at TAT. Kylla, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk to you today. We recently got results back from the annual Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance Human Trafficking Awareness Initiative. I guess to start off, for those who are unaware of what that is, can you tell me what that is and what it all entails?
Sure. So CVSA began a few years ago a human trafficking awareness initiative where really the focus is for all of the jurisdictions across Canada, the United States, and Mexico to take a week, respectively, either January for the U.S., February in Canada, and March in Mexico, to really saturate the commercial vehicle industry with information about human trafficking. And those dates, those months, correspond with the National Human Trafficking Awareness Month that each country has. And so it's about getting this messaging out there, doing as many presentations on human trafficking as possible, passing out materials in a really coordinated, strategic manner, with obviously the goal to more people having the information, the more calls are made to law enforcement, and the more victims recovered.
Now, CVSA reported that law enforcement personnel in all 50 states, 5 Canadian provinces, and Mexico participated, like you mentioned. I'm curious about Canada. With only 5 participating, I assume you would like to see all the provinces and territories participate, right?
Absolutely. Every year, we really talk to the CVSA lead agency contacts in each of the states, in each of the provinces, and are with our contacts in Mexico to give them ample information ahead of the initiative to make sure that they know that they have free materials that they can be passing out, etc. So, the work has been a little bit slower in Canada, but we did see an increase from last year, both in the United States and in Canada. So we will just keep working on that. This is actually the first year that the U.S. had all 50 states participating. So it's just a work in progress. We just keep pushing towards that total participation.
Wow. Why do you think in Canada it is slower to kind of get that messaging out to, the entire country?
I think TAT has been working within the United States for a much longer time than we've been working in Canada. And so we have partnerships that have been deepened and developed over time that we're still working on in Canada. So I do think that that's part of the slower adoption or slower participation within this movement on this particular cause.
And I mean, obviously, we're in the US, so, we hear of it here, but it is happening in Mexico. It is happening in Canada, right?
Absolutely. Human trafficking is happening in every country of the world. It is happening in rural, urban, as well as suburban areas. It's also recruitment is happening online throughout all of North America, but also globally. And so really, with CVSA's focus being on all of North America and TAT's focus being on all of North America, we really would like to see total saturation because we can help close loopholes to traffickers when all of our countries are really working together with that same type of messaging, with the same type of effort. We can cripple their ability to exploit victims. We can cripple their ability to cross the borders, both the northern border as well as the southern border. And we can really, just erect those barriers that are going to make it that much harder.
And I want to go back to that all 50 states participated. I mean, that's a huge deal. I assume that's something that
yes.
TAT has been wanting for several years now.
Yes, absolutely. When we first started out, I think we had 38 jurisdictions or states participating in the U.S. the very first year, which was still just such a strong showing. And then we've incrementally gone up each year. But to hit 50, that's been the goal from the beginning. And I think it's just the fourth year of the Human Trafficking Awareness Initiative. So to see that jump and for us to hit perfection, now it's just keeping it there and then continuing to see the growth in Canada with more provinces and territories participating. And then Mexico really came in strong. I'll tell you that in Mexico, we were able to do a couple of webinars with all of the inspectors ahead of their human trafficking awareness initiative. And then they had all of the printed materials for Guardianes del Asfalto, which is the model replication in Mexico. And so they were having conversations with drivers that were coming into all of the licensing agencies, all of the weight stations. And so it was just really exciting to see their coordination around it, their strategy, making sure that their inspectors really understood what human trafficking was so that they could speak and educate those drivers that they were interacting with.
When it comes to numbers, CVSA said more than 41,000 wallet cards were handed out, 17,000 window decals, nearly 2,500 posters. How important is this physical material to have out there and visible?
I think it's extremely important. People always say it takes 5 or 6 times before something really gets in your mind there. You remember it and it becomes important to you. Those physical reminders are key, right? When you see that poster, when you're stopping at a truck stop or rest area, when you have that wallet card in the cab of your truck or in your wallet, when you're flipping through to get your debit card out to buy a drink or a coffee or something, it's just so important. That window decal is extremely important, not just for a reminder for the driver, but also for victims who might be exploited, who are having to go truck to truck to truck. We actually had a story where a victim of trafficking There were two trucks, both from the same company, right next to each other, but one had the TAT sticker on it, and that's the one that she knocked on and asked for help. And that driver was able to help charge her phone, gave her a bottle of water, found out what happened, told her about the hotline. And she's like, yeah, I saw that. And so, they called the hotline together and were able to get her safe passage back to her family in another state that she had been separated from. So I just think that physical material is still such an important way to get that message out there, to keep it on people's radars, and just that they have that in a moment of crisis, in a moment where they might actually be seeing human trafficking, they have something that they can go to.
And I mean, obviously, that truck driver was trained to know kind of what to look for in that. How important is it? And I assume when it comes to, whether companies get their drivers trained or a driver just goes out on their own, it's not like hours and hours, right? Like if they want to kind of understand what to look for and get some training on human trafficking, where can they get that? And I assume, like I said, it's not a huge commitment.
No, absolutely not. So what I would say first and foremost is we have a free app that's available on Apple and Android phones that people can download. That's going to you can tailor your experience. So if you're an over-the-road driver, you're a local driver, you're a bus driver, whoever it is, they can tailor the experience, and then they're going to get those indicators of trafficking that are tailored to how they might interact with it. That's right at your fingertips. The app also links you back to our documentary-style video trainings, and those are between 17 and 23 minutes, depending on the industry. So you're under an hour, you have access to it, those indicators pull up, all of that information is right there at your fingertips.
And of course, TAT, Truckers Against Trafficking. I know recently you kind of migrated to just going by TAT, and you mentioned, other industries. That was a big reason for that. Can you talk to me more?
Yeah. So obviously, when we started TAT back in 2009, it was all trucking and the trucking industry. And, it was the first industry-specific anti-trafficking focus, like organization. And man, did the U.S. trucking industry just show the world the power of, giving tailored training to a mobile army, essentially. And because of the U.S. trucking industry, other industries began to come to us. Other partners began to come to us and say, can you create something for us? And so that is how we got into the bus industry. So we work with motor coach as well as transit, the school bus transportation, because there's so many kids that are being trafficked by family members. They go to school during the day, but they are being trafficked in the evenings, weekends, holidays. The energy industry came to us. They were already using the truck, the over-the-road training for their drivers that were hauling in and out of energy sites, but they said we also want something for all of the rest of our employees. And so that's where we sort of branched into the energy industry as well. And then we have training for law enforcement, et cetera. So, and then within the trucking industry, they said we need specialized training for our local drivers, as well as movers and in-home delivery. And so we now have those trainings as well. So again, everything's available on our website, tatnonprofit.org, as well as the app. But really, we just thought because of the example of the trucking industry, we were able to reach other industries because of the example of what they were doing. And so in order to not cause confusion, because there were people that were like, why is it Truckers Against Trafficking if I'm a bus driver, right? We just changed it to the acronym that, people have been using since we started back in 2009, which was TAT. And
did you ever imagine, back then that all these years later it would have grown to what it is?
No. No. I don't think, I will tell you, my family started TAT, and when we started it, we actually didn't know the scope or the scale of the trucking industry when we first began. So we had a major learning curve, and coming alongside members of the trucking industry, both drivers helping me build out our social media in the beginning, going to our first trucking shows, the Great American Trucking Show in Dallas that, back in the day, as well as Matt, really getting to know people, shaking their hands, people coming alongside us saying, it was drivers that told us we needed to get window decals. And so we created them because drivers asked us to. We're always wanting to continue to listen to the industry. What do you need? What works for you? Companies coming alongside. We just had no idea. But again, because of their example, because of the victims that have been recovered out of horrible situations, because of drivers caring and making that call, knowing what they're seeing and making that call on their behalf, it's these other industries that have said, wow, we want to follow that example. So I did not realize it would grow to this degree. I wouldn't have dreamt it, but I am so thrilled to be a part of it.
And you said it was your family that started TAT?
Yes.
What prompted that? Like, where did the idea come from? How did it start?
So my mom, there's 4 of us daughters. My mom sent a book to us, each one of us, and said, read this book back in 2007. And I know you don't know my mom, but like when she tells you to do something, you sort of do it. So we read the book, and it was called Not for Sale by David Batstone. And it was this overview book on human trafficking, global domestic labor and sex trafficking. And we all read the book, and I think we were just stunned, right? Like that slavery still existed. We knew there was injustice. We knew there were horrible things, but like this was not mainstream in 2007. People weren't really talking about that here in the United States. And it just like really opened our eyes. Like, oh my gosh, now that we know that slavery still exists, like we need to do something about it. And so we started our first nonprofit. We had a conference call because we all lived in different places. And we started our first organization, and we had the very doable goal of ending human exploitation worldwide because, you got to start small. So as we were learning and studying the crime and how it manifested and all of those things, we were like, what's not being done and what can we do? And my mom, whose parents ran a motel in El Paso, Texas, when she was growing up, she said, truck drivers were their main clientele that were coming through El Paso. And she said, who we should get are truck drivers. They're good guys. If they knew what was happening and they knew what it was, they'd do something about it. And out of that, TAT was born, first as an initiative of our first organization. But by 2011, all we were doing all the time was TAT. It's just nonstop TAT. And so we disbanded the first nonprofit, and TAT became its own 501c3 in 2011 based on that simple idea.
Wow, that is incredible. Are you and your sisters all still involved?
My sister, Candace Paris, was our original executive director. She served for about 10 years, and then she left to pursue other opportunities. A couple of my sisters help out financially. They support TAT. And then my mom still writes all of our publications.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm curious, how difficult has it been over the years, in doing this? I'm sure you have heard some horrific stories. How have you, dealt with that? And I assume that's probably acted more of as like a springboard to, keep with this fight.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie and say that it doesn't get to you sometimes, right? I've worked with survivors. We have survivors that we work with on our team, in our advisory council, on just any projects that come up. Like whenever we're creating materials or trainings, we always, have paid consultations with survivor leaders and stuff. I've heard a lot of stories. I've read a lot of books, both by survivors as well as allies that have written about the crime. It's brutal, and it takes a toll on your psyche. So I think, it's important. I try to focus on a lot of the good things. I think all of us do, try to just find the joy in the simple things. Take up an activity, whether it's just walking outdoors, hiking, archery, whatever it is. I mean, you got to have a moment where you're not thinking about the darkest of places. And I don't know if you follow us on social media, but I used to run all of our social media for years and years, and just putting all of that darkness out there all the time in a way to educate. But like all of that stuff, I started on Sundays way back when, just putting up pretty pictures on Sunday and just being like, remember that there's also a lot of beauty. And I think that that's what we always come back to is there's more good people in the world than bad. And so we focus on the good as well. And that really is sort of that focus of TAT as well as everyday heroes, right? Mm-hmm. There are people that will stand in the gap and do the right thing. So hearing the horrible stories, it's motivating to get out there and counteract that, to really say, I'm going to do my part. I always say human trafficking is an everywhere problem. So it's an everybody solution. And, we just have that role to play.
Wow. I've reported on your organization for a few years now, and I guess I never, looked into how it started. So I'm glad you shared that with me. If anybody listening does want more information, where can they go for that?
You guys can go to our website. It's very easy to navigate. It's tatnonprofit.org. Also, that app, you could just download it, Truckers Against Trafficking or TAT, on either Android or Apple phones. It's there and available. There's tons of information there. We're also on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So if you just want sort of like what's happening, etc. And then, of course, you can always write us at info@tatnonprofit.org to get on our newsletter, and that's a monthly newsletter. And then you'll sort of know, we always try to put a few headlines for the month about human trafficking, but you'll be able to keep up with where we're at. We have like the calendar for the next month's activities. So if you're ever around and can participate in one of the events that we're doing, we'd love to have you. So there's lots of different ways to get involved.
Awesome. Kylla, thank you so much for speaking with me and all the hard work that you put in.
Well, thank you. And thank you to all of the owner-operators out there and small trucking businesses. Thank you for keeping us all moving and keeping us stocked and ready to go. We appreciate you.
Thanks to all the hardworking drivers across the U.S. from the Allen Lund Company.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
High heat and low lubricity can break your diesel fuel down fast. Summer driving means crowded roads, more stress, dust, and a bigger risk of costly engine damage. Howe's Diesel Defender protects from the inside out, cleaning, lubricating, and fighting injector wear. Visit Howe'sProducts.com.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At TruckStop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on TruckStop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
And we're back. Great conversation with
Yes.
Kylla Lanier. I thought it was interesting. I'm always, curious. I should ask more how these organizations get started. You just kind of assume.
Yeah, there's usually a personal connection to the issue.
Which is, and hers was interesting. It was, kind of shows the power of a book and the power of listening to your mother. And she did both of those things. And that's, it grew.
We should all do more of both of those.
Yeah.
Right? More reading and more listening to our mothers.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's especially interesting, too, when someone gets involved in an organization like this that is trying to do so much good and trying to tamp down such an evil and horrible thing that's out there as well. So very commendable. We thank her for her work on this important issue, and everybody out there, do what you can to push back as well. Let's get to some business here, Ashley, before we close things out today. We haven't talked about Marty Ellis for a while, the man who drives the OOIDA tour truck, the spirit of the American trucker. He is out and about today and tomorrow. He's at the Rigs on Route 66 truck show. That's in Miami, Oklahoma. Looks like a pretty good time there. They've got a lot going on with live music and food. All on Main Street there in Miami, also known as Route 66. Proceeds from that event go to the Children's Advocacy Center of Ottawa County. So go to the show if you can, if you're in the area. And, of course, say hi to Marty. He'll be in the tour truck. Always happy to talk to him, or he's always happy to talk to people.
Yeah.
People are happy to talk to him, too.
Great guy.
But, yeah. Go in and see what's going on there and talk to Marty.
Yeah.
Let's look ahead to next week, Ashley. We've got a few things coming up. Doug Smith, OOIDA board member. We always enjoy talking to him.
Yeah, he's got quite the resume, so I'm excited to sit down and chat with him. And he's been, I think, over 50 years.
50 years. He's been on television.
Yeah.
He's a celebrity, maybe, in some circles
My
as well.
first introduction to him was watching him on
A&E Shipping
storage.
Wars.
Yes.
Shipping Wars,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, for sure. We'll talk to him about that. We're also going to get Louis Pugh of OOIDA in here as well, as we have reported. He was in Washington, D.C. this week, talking to lawmakers on Capitol Hill, trying to get them on board with a number of pro-trucker issues, fresh off the heels of that DOT initiative that pushed those 9 things that they put out as well. So using that momentum to see what else they can get done there, and we'll talk to Louis about that. And then Landline Magazine, our friends downstairs on the first floor here, have another issue coming out, as they often do. We'll talk to them. We'll get them in here to talk about what's going on. That's usually a pretty wide-ranging conversation.
Array of topics, but super educational, super helpful.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk to him about that as well. And then what else we got? A Senate committee voting on a number of nominations from the Trump administration next week as well. We'll cover that. Derek Barr is a nominee for administrator of FMCSA. We'll have his nomination voted on. He did go through that nomination hearing recently. I think all expectations are that his nomination is going to get enough votes here to move on to the full Senate for a vote.
Yeah.
So we could soon have a Senate-confirmed leader of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So we'll have that coverage as well. The couple other NHTSA, PHMSA, a couple other nominees are up for a vote there in that committee too. So lots to talk about next week as we kind of head into the weekend here. Any big weekend plans, Ashley?
Packing up to go camping.
Camping?
Yeah, we're a camping family with a RV.
And as a person who doesn't do a lot of camping, You go camping in like July and August?
I know. It is unhinged, as the kids would say. It is so freaking hot.
There's nothing you can do either. You can jump in the lake.
We swim. Yeah, no. We used to camp in Maine, obviously. That was beautiful. We'd go to the beach. Moved here, doing it at the same time. It's a whole other.
Well, and we're in Kansas City, and it's not just hot. It's the humidity that will really get you. And the bugs. You can tell I'm not a camper.
Yeah. And I'm pumped.
You're pumped. That's good.
Yeah,
and the kids like it?
The kids love it.
Kids love it.
Absolutely.
All right.
So, no, it's a good time.
Well, I will not be joining you, which is probably a good thing for you. But anyway, Ashley will enjoy some camping. I will enjoy staying inside the air conditioning, and we'll all be happy.
Exactly.
That's another edition of Trucking with OOIDA on this Friday. We'll see you again next week. Take care. Today's episode of Trucking with OOIDA was brought to you by a dedicated team of people that includes Jim Fetzer, Keegan White, Tennille Flick, and Kim Boren.
Got thoughts? We'd love to hear them. Call us at 1-800-324-6856 and leave us a message. Or you can send us an email to podcast@ooida.com, and we might include it on the show.